Hello, everyone. Welcome to the episode 62 of DevKami, and I'm Anchilio.
I am Tristan.
And I am swimming and I got lost. Give me a moment. And yeah,
Yeah,
we are on. So what do we start? I forget. I keep forgetting.
the calendar.
All right. So
So
PyCon meetup. Just
let me
kidding.
post it.
So the first thing that happened next the whole week is Saturday we had a Cloud Dev Fest. This happening at Farm 8 KL Central. Started on December 14th. Uh, so it's a whole day talk. It will cover Kubernetes, DevOps, distribution, yada. It's a whole day event. I'm not sure whether it can still. I'm not sure whether it's full or not because it tend to be hot. But check out the link. Check out the link. So this is a different than DevFest last weekend. This is the Cloud DevFest.
Yeah,
It's a
it
different
was.
event.
I was confused as well.
Yes. Then on the same day, at 9:30 a.m. at Wrinkle Plus at Vertical Corporate Office at Bangsa South, we had a
Yeah.
TypeScript for React developer meetup. I do not.
It's organized
at
by
it.
Malcolm.
Oh, it's actually by Malcolm. Interesting.
Yes,
Mhm.
and they did that with
All
React is and workshop is Malcolm.
And it's
Then
it's actually free, so it's a
Yeah.
full day
Yeah.
workshop that's free. It's actually quite
Yeah.
generous of
Yeah.
him.
yeah. Then on Tuesday, DevOps meetup is happening, but they didn't give any detail yet. It's detail is incoming. Then you also have Angular meetup on December 17th, same day.
Yeah.
The Angular meetup is happening at Sidecar at Menara Binjai. I do not know where it is, but you can find out. It's called at a company called Sidecar Malaysia.
Let me check it out.
Yeah. So I think that's about it until Saturday, which is the Python meetup.
Malcolm also side note is that Malcolm is trying to maintain a list of how to get to some sort of a guide to how to get to the meetup venue.
Uh-huh.
Mm. Does he have
So-
a repository?
Yes, it's under DevKami actually. So,
What?
but it's a manual key. I mean, it's
Where
a
is it?
it's a markdown.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Are we supposed to publish this? I'm not sure. Sorry, we haven't
It's
been
actually
publishing our podcast, so I don't know about this.
now we have to do the maintenance work.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, year end is also pretty busy for me.
No, but
Yes.
I'm forced to take all of my leaves by the last week of December. So
Wow.
most likely by then I will be like updating all of these things, all of these pages.
You're not going anywhere
No, there's nothing much to do.
because it's
Everyone's-
last minute forced leave.
No, yeah, but also because everyone's like going somewhere, so
Okay.
it's just crowded.
Yeah.
You should take your leave when people are busy with their own work. Then
Yeah.
that way you
Yes.
have the
Yeah.
focus on
Exactly.
yourself.
Yeah.
It's more
Yes.
fun like that.
Well, you guys are introverts. Okay, that's it. I think that's event. That's the event for next week.
Yeah.
In between, there's also a Python meetup on next Saturday, but we're going to talk about more detail of that next week.
No, you just might as well talk about it.
Okay. So there's a
Next week
Python
might be
meetup
too late.
first. So we had a Python meetup at ADEX Bangsa South happening at 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. On 21st
Wow, that's
December.
so long. That's very
Huh?
long. 2 p.m. to 5 p.m.
Because we
Wow,
actually
on a
have two
Saturday.
speakers. We had a cake.
Oh.
It's actually pretty short because you can expect the first hour to be gone.
Yes.
Then you have a
Yeah.
cake.
Yes. And as I always say, tech meetup in Malaysia, the main event is not the talk. The main event is when we talk outside the talk. So that's it. That's a Python meetup, and we should go to the events.
Yeah.
What's interesting happening for the past week?
Past week? Do you want to talk about past week? Or what
So
happened?
we have.
What happened to us? What did we do?
So the interesting
for
thing
past week?
for me is ECMAScript have optional chaining in the
Oh.
future.
Oh, that kind
What
of
is
what happened
this?
last week.
What is this
Yeah.
optional chaining thing?
Optional
Yes.
chaining
What?
is like you know the Kotlin syntax, the
No.
Elvis operator, where you have
So
when you
it's
do a now check, save
hmm
you if else.
so it's like you can call a method on a nil object
Yep, yep.
basically. Ah, okay.
Okay. Cool.
Uh,
Interesting.
I don't know.
I
For
don't
me,
know.
it's
I don't think that's a good idea actually. It
yeah,
just means it's going to
it's
be horrible.
it's not so useful for me because if I get an empty value, I have to handle it.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
it just like take away some of the new noun pointer exception, which you can avoid by checking them. Like most people complain,
Well,
like you have to check for
yeah, so
errors.
that's the thing, right? You get rid of the null pointer exception. Now you
Yeah,
have a logic error because
yeah,
you're supposed to be operating on
yeah,
something it's null, and
yeah.
now you have to trace where that null came from.
Or you have to
Whereas if it's a
trace.
null, yeah,
You have to trace
whereas
the
it,
faulty value where
yeah,
that empty value came
exact
from.
like where did it come from? Because if you had a null pointer exception, you know exactly what the null object is, right?
Yeah,
But if it was not like if it was a logic error, then how you have to trace through all of the calls, and if it's like a deep call thing,
yeah.
then that value was passed along over and over because you call a method that operates on that object. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if this is a good idea. I definitely it's going to be like there needs to be a very very good reason for that to be used if someone is if it's going to pass code review, at least in if I'm going to do code review. Like there
Just so
needs
you
to be a
know,
very good reason why. Yeah.
we're going to have language trend at our main topic, but I want to
Mhm.
close our bus corner simply because there's nothing else happening for the past week.
Really?
Everybody is celebrating Christmas and whatnot. So
There's an advent or code if you're interested.
yeah,
Uh,
Yeah, I haven't done mine. I've only
yeah,
done first day,
I already did a bit.
but let's see.
uh, then there's also the latest release of Flutter. That's the hype.
uh-huh.
So and Dart as well. So they officially support web. So this
Hmm.
Okay.
supposedly your same code can be used for the mobile and the web.
How are they doing it? Are they doing Canvas or are they doing DOM?
Yes, they're
Canvas.
doing for development. They are doing Canvas.
Hmm.
For the release build, they're gonna do like some sort of like virtual dome or something like that. But on development,
Hmm.
it gonna be similar to the mobile, which they render on a canvas.
Okay.
Hmm. Okay.
Also, was finalized or something.
Yeah,
And I
the
think that was the most exciting thing for
yeah.
last week, the Wasm.
The funny thing is on the W3C website, most of the congratulatory statement were from Chinese company.
Mm.
Like actually, not most. It's actually all of them are from China.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is it a culture for people to for company to write something on it?
I have no idea, but it's on W3C.
Okay, interesting.
So I guess whoever drafted the announcement uh, tried to like got some emails and then just posted whoever. So maybe this is a passive aggressive uh, signal by whoever was releasing the
Yeah,
announcement that hey, look, most of the people who are actually actively involved in WASM are these companies.
yeah,
Maybe
Yeah.
the other countries should step up and actually do something.
yeah.
It's not a
Uh,
country issue for the
yeah.
first place. It's
China's
our
companies been really aggressive in adapting those bleeding edge tools. Even like
yeah.
when Flutter was released 2 years back, Ali just jumped right into it.
Mhm.
So most of the do and don'ts of Flutter and horror story of Flutter actually came from those Chinese companies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So and also wait, there's something. And if you're a key-based user, you know that for the past that they've been trying they've been sending out Stella.
Yeah.
So recently they announced that they decided to stop it because there's a lot of in order to give you this kind of freebies, a lot of people create fraudulent like accounts just to get the drop.
Right.
So yeah, they decided that it's successful enough because people are creating accounts to get it. So they decided to stop it.
Yeah, but what is
So
this key-based thing? What are you supposed to
Keybase,
get from there?
Keybase is actually a very good software from the previous engineers of surprisingly OkCupid.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
But the main point is, like PGP is very painful to use.
Mm-hmm.
So it's something like this kind of key management, but for a more convenient way of handling identity and keys.
Mm-hmm.
So, and also they just added this Stellar, which is a kind of a cryptocurrency wallet support. I think they supported. I'm not sure if they support other wallets, but they added this support to the wallet, and they decided to spend a fortune to send out which they call airdrops, send out this cryptocurrency to whichever that have this key-based account to promote the usage.
Mm,
So they did it for a few times. I think two times. The amount is actually not that big, but it's actually not a small amount as well. Like the total of the two airdrops that I got were like, if I convert directly, it's around worth around 250 ringgit.
Yep.
not
So
So
bad.
not bad.
Yeah, not
yeah,
small change, but
yeah.
it's not.
But
I
there's
mean, you don't get rich, but I
yeah.
guess that's the reason why people create accounts. You get 10, then you get like 2.5, right? Two two
Yeah,
point five k, which is like
yeah.
good.
So they decided to stop that.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting technology. Check it out. They have a bunch of stuff included, like private encrypted Git repository and
Cloud
also
storage.
encrypted chat, encrypted storage, and yep, quite a bit of features.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is so that you can have privacy and all that. But telling
It
we're helping with the big communities.
much more easily than the traditional way of doing key signing with GPG.
Yeah.
But they are doing this. They're doing something similar to GPG, just a higher level of it. Treat it
Okay.
like a Slack on, like, which built on top, like based on IRC.
Mhm.
So they are like the Slack for GPG, if you ask me.
Okay. Cool. So that being said, anything else? If not, we should
No,
talk about the past
pass.
or, or future. I don't know.
So we were
Yeah,
talking about the
So
past week, and now this is the past decade.
yeah.
yes. So let's
Okay,
talk about
fine.
interesting. Let's continue from our interesting thing that happened for the past 10 years.
You want to continue
So
on the language thing?
let's talk about language. So because I know Tristan had a lot of opinion on languages,
No,
but
I
so let's
don't.
start with.
What are you talking about?
So we have a few interesting things that happen in language design term, or language design by itself. So first big one is Golang is out and actually getting adopted
Golang
across.
is actually just 10, just past its 10 years old birthday.
Yes. So it's very interesting because some language take a long time to get adopted at all. So Python take almost forever before people put it in their local vocabulary. Ruby take a while until Ruby on Rails comes in. Uh, Ruby, the language is around the same time as Python, roughly, but Ruby on Rails comes much later, and then it took off crazily. Then we have Swift was like past 10 years or so. Within the 10 years or so, never used Swift because I don't actually have reason to use Swift because I'm a Linux user. It can run, but it's just not something. It's not something revolutionary
Well,
for
it's
me at this
supported by
point.
IBM. I'm not sure how much IBM did
No,
with Swift.
not the Swift language, but it's the web framework for Swift is
Oh, okay,
supported by
Yeah,
IBM.
okay.
yeah,
What?
So it's
What?
like
Okay.
something like a Ruby on Rails for
Just like
Swift.
Rails. Rails is not Ruby.
yes.
Yeah.
Then, so amazingly, this is just a new language, right? And you're talking about okay, so forget about the banks and the traditional corporate; those guys never changed. They're still on C Sharp or Java. Java is the other thing, but let's go back to that later. Uh, so the interesting thing about this is that one, uh, they make concurrency easy. traditionally, when you do conversation, we almost talk about threads. And people that work on threads remember that it's actually very hairy. You know what I mean? You need to make sure that the function are strictly
You're talking to a
isolated.
Ruby programmer here. What threads are you talking about?
What?
You don't even use thread in Python.
What threads are you
I
talking?
I do have to use threads when I have to process multiple. It's one of those. It's during the time where I had to generate
I think it's more
process a lot of
efficient
configuration
if
file.
I think it's more efficient for a single threaded language to just have you just spawn multiple one with multiple event
Yeah,
loops
yeah.
because
But see,
save you a lot of
so
headache.
traditionally when we talk about concurrency, that's what I talk about, right? But nowadays things change so much. Like what thread, what processes.
It's like
So
the
that's the first.
Apple advertisement, right? Like, mommy
Yeah.
wants a computer.
Yes.
You remember,
So
you
people,
remember
so you
that
don't even talk about
advertisement?
thread anymore. And to go side topic a little, Engine X. Remember that we talked about Engine X. Engine
Yeah,
X is crazy
event
that
loop.
you use event loop instead of like multiple workers like Apache does, and
Mm.
it's still faster than multiple worker. The same happening in programming languages. It's crazy. So there's language design alone, right?
You know what's
Then
crazy
another
with
thing,
the current programming languages is that so Microsoft had its C Sharp, Go had its
yeah,
Golang, Apple had its Swift, and now Google has a new one. Well, Android has Kotlin. So all of the big so we're just waiting for Amazon to make their own language,
Yeah.
and then
yeah.
we'll have
But the
like
thing is,
Which adapt
and
so
yeah, and Facebook had the hack
yeah,
PHP thing,
yeah.
so they have their own
Which
Kotlin are not
languages.
created by Google,
yeah.
by the way. Kotlin are
Sorry,
Yeah.
which
not
one?
created by
Yeah.
Google. They're created by
Well, yeah, but
JetBrains.
Yeah, they
but
adapted
JetBrains and
it.
then they adapted it.
Yeah. For
Yeah,
Dart is created by Google, but it's a single
correct.
thread model, just like
Yes.
JavaScript.
But that are designed for
But
different
I don't
reason.
think Amazon is gonna come up with anything new because Amazon been known to not. I don't think Amazon ever come up with their own stuff.
They optimize existing
Yeah.
stuff very
They've
well.
been notoriously known in the open source community to adapt and not contribute back.
So they're
Correct.
the rocket internet of open source.
Yep.
If you
Yeah, but
remember
Rocket
Rocket
Internet
Internet.
exists.
Yeah.
Amazon exists before Rocket Internet
Yeah.
exists. So it's actually the other way around.
Well, I think Lazada was Rocket, right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
And then they spun up to. I mean, I think
And so
Rocket's
it.
still a big investor on
Yeah.
Lazada.
yeah.
Yeah.
So another thing that is interesting for languages is that functional method is common now.
Yep.
So notice that. Uh, what's crazy
But
about
Lisp
that?
has been there forever, right?
It's there forever, but it's getting mainstream.
Yes.
Hmm.
Like
Uh,
almost everybody wants like rush to implement this kind of functional functionalities, even though it's
Correct.
half, even though some of them is half baked most of the time.
So
Correct.
what's old is new again, basically.
Yeah.
Yes. So, for example, JavaScript had anonymous function for a while. Now it's like the standard pattern for you to uh, build your web application, to organize your web application. Even though anonymous method is something from last century, in the 60s, 70s, they have that from Leaves. What else? What else is there? Anonymous function. Current is not used as much yet, but language, they have support for it.
Very
Language have
easy to
support
do
for
it
it.
in JavaScript nowadays, but I
Correct.
don't think the it's gonna be much efficient. I'm not sure about the
Correct.
performance or the overheads.
Map and reduce style mapping of a function. Instead of looping array in JavaScript, you literally just map and run those things on it. That is actually from old functional style, mainstream now. Um, uh, so I think it's interesting that for the past few years, functional methods it's so common nowadays, especially in front end. It works for them. So instead of writing a loop, you map across a function. Functional method is mainstream now. Some go a bit extreme.
But I think some
And
of the misunderstanding of functional programming for people is that you get to write uh what you call it short codes to do a lot of stuff.
yeah, put it this way, I can make an ugly code out of functional programming.
There's a lot of association with like those like even though people like bash on nowadays like fluent
Yeah,
interface is they call those functional methods, but it's actually very old.
yes. It's very for example, if you build a views, you build a on let's say Vue.js, even though it looks like function, but you organize it like methods, class and
Yeah.
methods.
And
So you, yeah, go on.
yeah. And I'm a React user, and the way I'm not sure how to put React hooks.
Yeah,
React hooks basically they try to introduce like functions, kind of a replacement to class that do
yeah.
equal something equivalent, but the hooks and stuff make I don't know how to put it. It doesn't look functional at all to me.
It's not because you. It's generally how Elixir would do things. You have a function whose sole job is to hold state. And so that's why you hook into
Yeah,
that. So it's basically a global
yeah,
variable that you hook into and you call. And so your whole thing is still functional. It's
yeah.
immutable, but then you always refer to that
Is that
that other component that's
as a
stateful.
state provider?
Yeah, it is a provider. So that's why it's accessible anywhere else. So
Yeah,
basically, it's like a global
yeah. But it's as
super state variable.
but is state is a I think the how it work is at least you don't have to call or will take the global state directly. You do it
Yeah.
via
So there are some, how would you say, safeguards against
yeah,
abusing, because it is in the end like a global state variable.
mm,
So you want, like, it's the same as how you would do Redux or Flux architecture, is
yeah.
you
But
have
at least you do it via a
particular,
functions,
yeah.
and that is very old. Is
Yeah, because object orientation, believe it or not, object orientation is about state management.
I
The whole
don't
point
Yeah,
of
that's the thing. Unfortunately, object oriented still is how the real world works. You have state in the
yes,
real
yeah,
world, or like at least
yeah,
how
yes,
computers work,
yeah,
right? You have
yeah,
RAM and you manipulate the state of RAM.
yeah,
It's This is not like an Apple repair center where something's broken in the PC. They just give you a new,
yes,
sorry, in the
yeah,
laptop, they give you a new laptop. So that like you basically just
yeah,
replace the whole thing that was that you need
yes.
to
yeah.
fix. So
And
Okay.
it is still a good um, analogy. It's
yeah,
analogous to the real world. That's why it's easier to
X,
think about it.
I think Erlang is like based off the actor model, right? Actor model is pretty much the one of the convention of OO
Yeah,
where
Hmm.
supposedly which Java specified by doing them
And C++,
like getter and
C++,
setter. Yeah,
well, Java took from C++. C++
yeah,
bastardized the whole
yeah,
concept of object orientation by putting
yeah,
like your virtual table. So you don't
yeah,
actually have a message passing. You have a virtual table that like routes all of these things, and it
yeah,
becomes
yeah,
like class-based inheritance became a thing
yeah,
basically.
and it's not a bad thing to get weird, but it's not a bad thing because if you want to build,
yeah.
let's say you want to build a game object, that's how you build
No,
it.
the point of getter and setter is that you don't directly
Manipulate the
access
state.
animal state. So you do it via a middleman, like a central dispatch. Similar,
Yeah.
if you do it in Golang, it's gonna be via a single channel.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So instead of everybody try to do it, so that is actually if you do like something like a state provider like that, then nobody is gonna like corrupt the or create a race
Or
condition of
even if
that
it
state.
does corrupt it, then you know exactly which portion. Because most of the problem with many God objects like this is that because everyone can just manipulate the state, you don't know what the state is at certain point of time.
Yeah,
But
Mhm.
if you do have like particular measures or safeguards, you can only access the state through these things. Then you can always put like you can inject some kind of instrumentation where to track, for example, okay, this was called, this was called, this was called, and you have like
Yeah.
a timeline of state manipulations. Then you know exactly what the state is at a particular moment in time. And of course, that the problem is that because you can actually expose publicly like variables or like state or sorry attributes of an object, then that's where the problem happens. So now you don't have control over how your object state is manipulated, can be manipulated directly.
Yeah. So which is a few of the languages on Python, they don't have concept of private. They don't have concept of private variables. Private variables are precisely designed for this reason. Make it more fine tune the access of the state of an object, right? It's just that
But I
on most dynamic languages, the developer are careful about don't touch the attribute directly.
actually the original design should be that all states should be private, and it's the public that is the exception.
Yeah.
So, for example, C actually has this concept of private public, right? Like everything else
Yeah.
is private by default, but if you
Yes.
expose it through in the header file, then it
Yeah.
becomes public, and everyone knows,
Correct.
okay, this is shared state. And it's the
Yes.
same thing for objects. It's just that I'm not sure why people will, like, for example, in Rails, your model has like it's the columns that are mapped to these objects. And I guess it's same in Django. The columns that are mapped to this object state are directly accessible, directly manipulable,
Yes.
and so that's why you have all
Yes.
of this like, oh, it now becomes a God object because everyone can just change it, and it's very
Yeah.
difficult to debug at that point.
Yes. But in practice, when we use this object, we almost never touch those states directly, or we
Uh,
are
de-
more careful about it.
it depends on your disciplines.
Yeah.
Like, if the
Yeah.
person is like, let's say, I'm not gonna blame junior, but it happens to junior most. Like, if they if they're gonna figure out a way to make it work, they're gonna do it by hook or
Yeah.
by crook.
If,
They're
if
gonna
it's
hook.
if it's possible, it will be done, and
Yeah.
so that's the
Yeah,
thing,
you
right?
can have.
Yeah. Correct. But it's just that we are, for some reason, just careful. I just don't know why. It's just a circle I think. So that's that.
Yeah, 1% is
So-
okay. It's just
Yeah.
sharing code that is more problematic.
Correct.
All right.
So
Uh,
that's the thing, right? So recently, in the past decade, people have been rediscovering these things. Like, so again, object-oriented programming, that was the original idea about message passing, and so that's what happened with Elixir as well. It took Erlang's
Yes.
actor model, put put like a really nice um, flavor on top of it. So
Yeah.
it's almost like Ruby, but it enforces. So it's not possible anymore to change the state of another object because there's no such thing, right? There's no such thing as
Yes.
the state of another object, and so that's
Yes.
why it's actually closer to the original object-oriented programming than
Yes.
the languages that say they are object-oriented.
Yeah.
So original object orientation is about message passing and simulation, which is about telling a state that a thing have this kind of things. So languages also interesting for my last thing is your embedded system can run high level language now.
Yeah.
Uh,
JavaScript. Almost everything can run JavaScript.
Yes.
And eventually, your CSS will run JavaScript.
What? Okay.
Yes, you can because
So one of
CSS
those
is
days,
Turing complete is
Oh,
proven to be
yeah.
Turing complete, right? So
Yes.
eventually,
Yeah.
someone will write a a JavaScript compiler in CSS.
So
Yes.
which scripting language should I use? Like a CSS or a JavaScript framework?
Yeah.
You
let,
know,
let me put let me give the link of the CSS proven as Turing complete.
yeah. I saw that one. So so the last thing, embedded system can run JavaScript, and the craziest thing now is, within the last decade, JavaScript is the mainstream language. It previously, as a JavaScript exists as a language that you cannot run away from.
I think
Uh,
because HTML5 standardized it, so it's the only language
Correct,
that is
correct.
pretty consistent across all platform. It runs on browser for everyone.
Yes, yes. So before the 10 years before it's like JavaScript is like spices. You just put it a little, then make your web page nice. Then HTML5 comes out with Ajax and all that. Now everybody use that for good
Ajax
reason.
is
There's good reason to use
Ajax
it.
came up before HTML5.
XML
yeah, so
HTTP request
Yeah,
by
they just
Microsoft
standardized
Internet
it.
Explorer.
Yeah, they just standardize and adopt within the past 10
sorry.
years. Actually, way before that. Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of Turing complete, that's actually day 2, wasn't it, in Advent of Code?
Yeah, the thing is Turing complete.
Yeah, no, that's like making a Turing computer, basically. So
Correct.
if you don't understand what Turing completeness means or what does it mean to be Turing complete, like look it up. And if you're not doing Advent of Code, then that's a good way to introduce yourself to various computer related computer science algorithms. So the first day, because I did the first day, that's the only one I remember, which is recursion.
Yeah.
The second day, I saw Turing complete, basically a Turing computer implementation. I said, I don't have enough time for this, and I haven't done the rest of it. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to interject
Okay.
that trivia.
So JavaScript, then said because of Ajax adoption, it comes a bit before the 2010s, but it is seriously used everywhere like the mainstream tools. So then you come with things like you really have to use JavaScript now, which is why you have jQuery. The crazy thing for me is that one, JavaScript is a mainstream language now, as in people choose to use it from spices that people just put it for niceness to we don't actually have a choice because that's the only way to make your web page very that dynamic to JavaScript as a first choice language now.
It's gonna change
But-
soon, I think. The
Yeah, it's
status
gonna
quo
change. Especially with the WASM being
So,
adopted by
That this
WPC.
this comment from Jaejun on Slack, like wouldn't it be ironic if JavaScript dies on the browser but lives on Node? So that is actually possible.
Yeah, precisely. Because Flutter may have a chance. I do not know, but people hype about it. So
How do you know? How do you make sure that Flutter won't convert to WASM as the output?
Oh, the thing is, that's the thing, right? You can't. The reason why modern computing platforms are a bit successful is that because you can compile down to low level and don't really care the language.
And one of the most successful things, like it's not so obvious during the early days of HTML5, is that the introduction of evergreen browser version.
Yeah.
So that the concept of your browser is supposed to be updated constantly. So unlike previously, like when you have to start with like certain version of IE and things like that, most browsers they just update regularly. So and you are expected to upgrade them regularly.
Correct. So, as I said, language changes are crazy, very crazy. So, and that to me is insane. Then another thing that I'm going to jump off track from programming language, web and all that to databases. But past 10 years also crazy in a way that people are jump from SQL database suck because big company discovered that join us slow, so we should use NoSQL databases because SQL are making things slow, and not this. And now everybody is like,
Do they
use
really
a
think?
bloody-
Do they really think SQL make things so slow? Previously?
I do not believe this is the case. Actually, it's more like join make things slow. SQL-based database are not flexible because they're column-based. And it's not scalable because it's designed for the APs or whatever. So one of those things. If I can find the old video, about MongoDB is web scale, this is funny. So the thing is, it used to be that when it started like from CouchDB. Nobody remember CouchDB anymore. Then later MongoDB. And within the database, they introduce things like automatic scalability, as in you can easy. By default, you have to use a cluster. By default, you process the data in memory because that's the fastest thing around, and all that. And yeah, people literally jump from an object store to key value store. Already started as a key value store for other things. Now it do a bit more than just a store. You can support other
Yeah.
operation.
Still pretty awesome.
Yeah. So, but it started where Redis, when people start using it, they're using it as a in-memory key value store because key value is the way to store things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So throughout the 10 years, things get interesting in the way that first argument, SQL database are not flexible because you can only store basic data type, and column. So for the past few years, PostgreSQL introduced a complex data structure as a column value. So it started from HStore, then to JSON. So you can literally do a SQL query to JSON.
Yep.
And that is
So
like,
it started off with just key values, and now it's like objects, a proper like
correct.
JSON object.
Yep. And indexable.
Yes, it's indexable and all that. So the one of the origin, so that alone already kill off one of the flexibility argument of those SQL databases. Then another one is that you need to process data in memory and whatnot. Well, some people still do that for specific reason, but nowadays they have SSD. SSD are fast nowadays and cheap enough nowadays, so you can just run it on this.
Yep.
So
And also the algorithm change of database system from traditional rotational medium to SSD. The way to handle the data indexes are a bit different underneath.
yes. So, and one more thing is, so as a result, we can change the database, right? It also demolished the old idea that SQL database are not scalable. I don't even know what that means. So, but what is interesting is that when MongoDB comes out, you can easily set up a cluster of 3 or so to make querying and all that easily. No, it's just not a thing now. We just like throw to Amazon and forget about it, right? So that's not a thing now. So, and also one of the things that I discovered, as I go to use MongoDB is that querying suck. I'm sorry. One of the thing about the original NoSQL database is that the queryability is not as good as SQL. So as a result, some of the different databases also adopt SQL-like language for querying.
Yep. I think the adaptation, the why MongoDB is successful because they do previously one-to-one mapping of how you do things in RDBMS.
Yep.
So they have a mapping, but unfortunately, to do aggregates, you have to do map reduce operation with JavaScript.
Yes. So,
and trivial as well. If you need full text search, you actually don't need unless you need a very specific kind of way to build your rules and stuff. You actually don't need Elasticsearch. You can do it in Postgres with the vector, TS vector, and it's very fast and it's very nice. So do check it out.
Okay. Which goes to that, right? Previously we want to do text search. You add the Elasticsearch or Solr. Not anymore. Your database can handle it fast enough.
Fast. Not fast enough. It's very fast.
Yes. Okay, so that is new, but doesn't mean
new.
No, that is new to me. That's new to me.
Trivial.
Yeah. So, but it doesn't mean that NoSQL have died. There's certain thing where NoSQL, some of the specific database are convenient. So, for example, a graph query, yeah, you can possibly do it in Postgres. I know there's an engine for the long time back, but the current easiest way for people to do graph-based query on a specialized database is actually Neo4j. Because Neo4j, you can use that. Why you want graph database? Because you can do shortest part, so you can do part optimization, and you can also do relationship. But the big disclaimer is I use MongoDB for transparency work to trace the money flow from politician and the influence flow of decision making and all that. So you can definitely do that in a relational database, and it would definitely fast. It's just that to me, Neo4j do one thing right in a way that they have a very specialized query language just for graph, just for querying network. So that works for me. But so to me, NoSQL didn't die, it's just there. But otherwise, mostly dead. And some of the one that still survive, for example, what's the key value store that I like about again? The key value thing in memory key value
Redis.
thing. Redis, yeah.
Well, that's
Redis are
no,
not-
sorry, the other one, Memcache.
No, Redis. I'm talking about Redis.
Okay.
Okay. Redis first
It's still-
started people with SQL.
I think it still lives on like services like Firebase key value store is NoSQL.
Yeah.
Very convenient to work with.
Yes. But
If
it's
you
just
want
not something
quick
that you
and
require.
convenient to work with, then is NoSQL is actually still okay.
Yeah. Correct. It's just that it's not hype nowadays. If you know how to use it, you will use it. But it's not the first choice nowadays. You want to build app, people say just use Postgres or MySQL. In fact, even SQLite have JSON support now. I do not know
Extension.
whether
There is an extension, but it's not so straightforward to work with. But it's it's there if you want to.
correct.
And
Yeah.
geospatial support as well for most of the databases, even MySQL,
Oh, yeah.
SQLite. I don't think any NoSQL has a really good engine on that.
Yes. So
Correct
And
me if I'm
also-
wrong.
no, you are definitely correct. Postgres is still the first option. Other databases, we
It's
can
not like
get
it's the best, but it does a lot of things. And if
It's
you
well
really
tested.
if you really need that kind of like, let's say, a intensive write operation, then Postgres might not be your choice. But there are a lot of ways to mitigate that. So depend on how you can build a intermediate system to do it.
You can
depends on how
queue
you
your
do it.
rights
Yeah.
as long as you don't need to.
Mm.
You don't need assurance that it was actually written
can-
at that time.
You can turn off safety as well. So no F-sync. Very fast, right? But you can
Yeah.
go up if something goes wrong.
Correct. It doesn't mean in the database world it's like you solve everything. It's not. The F-sync issue that Chilean raised is actually not too long ago. It's an issue because in certain configuration it can cause data loss, and it's a big
Hey.
issue.
Cosmic rays can cause data loss.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's why we have ECC memory or cosmic
Yeah.
rays.
Yes.
Unfortunately, we
That's why you
see.
can use Butterfly to code.
Unfortunately, our server still crashed from ECC RAM from memory corruption.
Oh.
Why? I have no idea. Just turn off one CPU core and it works.
So what else is interesting? Database is really interesting, but I think I'm going to stop on that. Anything else on databases before I forget?
I have nothing to add on.
So databases covered. Deployment
Ryzen.
covered already, right?
Ryzen is a new thing the last decade. AMD is
Well,
back.
Yeah,
You have multi-core processing
yeah.
Okay.
for the consumer.
Fine.
On
And
the
so
cheap.
now, on the cheap, and so now all developers, well, actually multi-core is like also in the last decade.
Yeah.
Multi-core
Also because of-
is a thing.
Also
Yeah,
container.
because of-
Also because of container.
Mhm.
Be like on especially if you have a provisioner, you can provision a certain core to a certain container, so it make it sort of sort of like a. It might be not enough for VM, but it's powerful
Yeah,
enough for a container.
Yeah.
yeah,
So
container.
the hardware, the development hardware has increased, well, and the same as consumer hardware, right? So before,
Yeah,
you have to hand optimize your code so that
yeah,
it will run on like a 2 GB computer, and 2 GB was like a large thing back
yeah,
then. Now you have like 4 gig minimum being sold. You can't even find a 2 gig laptop nowadays, right? It's like
yes,
4 gig minimum. And so what's happening is that people are doing all of these fancy stuff without much regard for optimization, because
yeah,
like if they if my user cannot use my application, then they're
Yeah,
too poor to pay for it or something like
yeah.
that.
I
So
have
yeah,
they're
I've
not
got
my
a name.
target audience.
I've got a name called framework Electron.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
yes,
they just use resources all the time.
Yeah,
So it's
it's
both
just
a
how.
good thing and a bad thing. I think the amount of like the speed of of hardware that we have right now changed how we do things, how we do programming. Like
yes,
now, you don't need a desktop. You just carry your laptop
Yeah,
around. Before, you always had to go to the office and to like sit down on the table, because your desktop that can compile your code is there. It's powerful enough to compile your
yeah,
code. And I guess this is also one of the bigger influences of why people are now doing remote, because now they can they can afford a proper development machine at home or whenever they are on travel. Like they can carry around a powerful development machine, whereas before, like, yeah, you're basically tethered to your desk if you want to do any kind of work. Or you can like the internet access is also now more widely available, and so
yeah,
now you can just like VPN into your office computer if you really need that kind of power.
yeah.
Whereas before,
Availability
or
it's
of
like,
wireless connections, not
mhm,
just Wi-Fi,
yeah,
but also the abundance of what
yeah, 4G
yeah, wireless carrier like 4G, pretty good connections.
or the
But
microwave
the
thing.
yeah the first work laptop that I used more than 10 years back was it doesn't come with a Wi-Fi chip, so
Hmm.
that's how much
Yeah, you
different
had
it
a
is.
dongle, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I
No,
remember my first, so the first broadband I had, I think that was like 10 years ago. Yeah, about 10 years ago, was uh was the microwave thing. So because the lines were not ready for DSL, so the phone lines were too old, and so the only way you can get broadband was either through cable, which was super expensive, or
yeah,
through that microwave thing. 1 megabit per second was really really fast at that point compared to modem, right?
yeah.
To
you lucky
56.6K.
dog. You
Yeah.
lucky
50,
person.
it was like night and day difference from 56.6K
Yeah.
to like 1 megabit. Like, whoa,
Can you imagine
you
those
can
video?
actually.
Those are pixelated.
What
Yeah,
video?
Imagine.
but there wasn't
What video you're talking
computer.
about?
I say it. I said enough.
Yeah.
But that being said,
What video?
computing
Swimming
are
is a
the
first world
cheap.
No,
person.
we only what we do is we just like download on BearShare or something, or
Yeah,
Napster.
yeah,
What are you
Yeah.
talking about?
So meanwhile, computing are the cheap. Don't worry. There's a continuation of last week. Computers
Yeah.
are very powerful now. My
Mm-hmm.
gaming machine,
very
which
cheap.
is crazy powerful right now, is like 3,000 ringgit, and you can do deep learning fast
What are you
enough.
using?
Huh?
What is this? What computer is this? Three
It's my
thousand
living
ringgit.
computer running on the Ryzen. It's an older Ryzen and a GTX
Mm.
1060.
I
It's a
had
desktop.
this.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I had this realization recently as well because
yeah,
like electricity utility doesn't the price doesn't go down,
yes,
and we are plugging in more devices on the like at home, but
yes,
you like for me the bill the price that I pay per month stays stagnant. It also mean like how much more power efficient all these devices are compared to
Mm-hmm.
yes,
like last time.
correct. And the crazy thing is, another crazy thing is, if you really want power, you can actually rent it online on the cloud services. on the ship. You can't hold it forever, but you can get it cheaply temporarily.
Yeah, unless
Uh,
you're mining Bitcoin.
yeah, correct.
Yeah. So I guess
Uh,
this is the next article on similar to real estate. Should you buy a house or should you just rent before you're 30 or something
Yeah.
yeah.
like that?
I'm
Should you
overpaying
buy a
over 30.
supercomputer or should you rent
No, the
until
answer
you
is already answered. The answer is the question already answered. All startup rent their own machine. Almost nobody, unless you're a multi-billion business for real. You're the big boys. Unless you're like the big boys that absolutely control every single part of the infrastructure. The short answer is rent. 90%
yeah,
of the company you start will be rent.
Yeah.
yeah. One of
That
our
is
clients is like that. The one that
mm,
Swimming is describing as big boy, they have bare metal everywhere. Everything is like we have to deploy to their servers. They have a NOC
Yeah,
of their own. Like you have to requisition like server resources, etc. It's like
correct.
it's huge.
yeah.
Their
Yes,
data
And
center is
they
huge.
phase out very quickly. All these hardwares,
yes.
they're not
Mm.
cheap.
So
Oh, we don't
for
have to
us
worry
software
about the
people,
hardware. They have their NOC, so
correct.
they manage it themselves.
Yes, but for Google, Amazon run hard infrastructure, so they don't count. For Google and all that, they just decided they just cheaper. They have special project to run hardware, so they have a good reason for that. Even the big, sort of bigger one like Uber, Netflix, they don't even have their own data infrastructure. Yes,
You still have them internally as a test and stuff.
correct.
But yeah,
So
I would,
the answer for that is rent. It's already answered right now.
And
So
governments are also doing the renting thing.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
they're
one of the
leasing.
biggest things was it Microsoft that won the contract from the U.S. government,
Yep,
and
yes,
Amazon is
yes.
complaining that
yeah.
like something. So
Amazon is
yeah,
suing.
So
because
I
Amazon
think
doesn't have their own programming language. That's the problem.
Yeah, they
no,
have.
in
Yeah,
this case,
Yeah.
they do the right thing because Amazon is the bigger player compared to Microsoft in that space. So
yeah.
you
But
should
in
also
terms of
respect for that.
not to say technical capabilities, but at least Microsoft owns their stuff or something like that.
Yeah, correct. And they have experience with government and all that. So that's another story as well. I want to add something that Nicholas said. Ubiquitous computing. Ubiquitous computing, the term is not like computers everywhere. Yes, it's computers everywhere, but
It's just
computing everywhere. But the original concept for it also includes sensor nodes, meaning your house have sensors. Those are computing
yeah.
devices.
Nowadays,
So
you carry a sensor around.
correct. Your phone, yes, in a way we are reaching there in a way that we're talking about phones and all that. The original concept is like is your traffic light would have a computer that automatically do things and you can communicate and the process and all that. So in a way that is IoT. Ugh, I hate that term. So
Why
the
you do you
Internet
hate
of
that?
I hate
It's
buzzword
fine.
as well. So
It's
Internet of
fine.
Things, ubiquitous computing are closer to the
Edge
modern day
computing,
Internet of Things.
Yeah.
edge
The
computing. You
the new
mean
one is
Ugh.
H.
So, but
The
the
new one
point
is the H
is,
computing.
yeah. So I just want to add a
edge
random.
AI? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just want to add a random comment on this because we are very close to having computing everywhere. Sensors are cheap. So for the 12/12 sale, I just do window shopping. Uh, internet control switch is 30 ringgit. You want to get a proper big name brand for safety and all that, it's 90 ringgit for a power switch. Internet connected power switch that can connect to your assistant. The wall plug and all that, the special wall plug and all that, there's 300 ringgit, which I think is overpriced. Interesting technology, but a bit overpriced. Uh, and you have actually a computing that can control your aircon using infrared that is connected to Wi-Fi, so they can have smart devices and all that. We are very close. We actually are very close to having computing device everywhere and meaningfully interacted.
I thought you were going to say we're very close to Skynet, but okay,
Uh,
fine.
artificial intelligence is a buzz, simply because uh, the whole idea of AGI will be killed way before AI we get to the second AI winter, because currently everything is AI and it's all hype,
It's
But you
actually
without
know,
fine.
substance.
all of these like connections between devices is like simulating a neural network, and
Yeah,
suddenly it will gain its own
Ah,
consciousness.
yeah.
You
You
know,
gotta you
I
gotta
see.
merge. You gotta converge.
So
going
Arthur
to
C.
rise up
Clarke,
and suddenly become self-aware
Yeah.
and ask us
uh,
why did you
for
make me?
Uh, I just want to die. Sorry. Well,
yeah, so it's called Dial F for Frankenstein by Arthur C. Clarke. It's a short
yes.
story. I see whether I can share one that I can share out. So essentially,
Or
what happened is, your phone network are connected around the world are very complicated.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result, intelligence emerged because of the telephone network. So this story is called Dial F for Frankenstein.
Mm.
yeah, I know.
I'll
Press
share
F
the
for
link.
press F for respect.
Yeah. So let me share the link as well.
And also something that is a bit unrelated.
Yep.
What else that are different is that we get a monthly sale team as like 11223344, and we are now at 1212.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, did we
Uh,
actually have all of those 1122 something
Yeah,
monthly
it
sale?
just made the
yeah. Is this made up
I
by
thought it was
the
only like the end of. It used to be the end of the month
no? No,
sale.
it's every month.
yeah.
So let's say August, you have the 8/8,
Mm.
Yes.
the 9/9.
Yes.
Yeah, the 881 was a big one, I think. I think Citron had the 88 sale, right?
Yeah, the
So it's like,
Merdeka sale as well. Normally in Malaysia, it's because they link it with Merdeka sales.
mm.
So
But why
uh
is that? Is it because people just did this? Is it because China's 11/11 sale
Yeah,
was
it's influenced by
booming?
China.
yeah.
Mm.
But for
So
that is because 11/11 has special meaning. It's all one.
also most of these e-commerce platform, like the same as Lazada, is they were acquired by Chinese not government, Chinese company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. So these are probably like the Black Friday equivalent in the US, because like I wasn't sure, for example, like back then there was like a Black Friday sale, but we don't even know what Black Friday means, right?
So
Because it's a very US
it's
centric celebration. But
yeah,
people are digging 11/11 and 12/12 just because
yeah,
it's like more accessible. Like, okay, it's 11/11, easy to
yeah,
remember. Yeah. 88, especially
Yeah.
for ones with Chinese influence, because 8 apparently is an auspicious number. So
yeah.
88, 8,
Yeah, that never
yeah, at
happened
8
in
p.m.
China. In China,
Yeah.
it's 1-1 because the thing is they sell it to single that have money to
That,
spend.
trivial is called the 11/11 is actually called a single day.
Yeah,
And then they
because
So
just
1-1
co-opted it for e-commerce.
yeah,
they no e-commerce site taking that venue to tell
Yeah.
single people to
Th-
spend money
It's the
as
same
a
story as Valentine's Day then. Like, it's supposed to
yeah.
be for people to
It's
express
actually
love
targeted
and
for
love.
different demography, because
yeah
single days kind of focus on electronics and stuff previously.
yeah
Hmm.
Previously, so like it's similar to Cyber Monday for because it's close to that
Hmm.
period as well. Like 11/11 is pretty much close. So
So I'm wondering why China is like, because I was actually expecting, at least in the last decade, right? Russia would be the one who will rise in technology, but it is actually China. So that
I
was
give
actually
a
quite
very
surprising.
I will give you a very contrarian view because
Mm-hmm.
China still keep the manufacturing.
Mm.
That is one reason. So they actually keep the manufacturing for electronics, whereas everyone else offshore it because it's expensive to cut costs.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
one. Number two, I used to have some classmates from China. They are very tenacious. Their thirst for knowledge is crazy. So at the time at the time I stayed in university, people that uses Ubuntu are considered advanced, right? The same group of
Mhm.
students are using Arch Linux or Gentoo, and
Mhm.
that's their default operating system just because they learn more. I
That
know
was my
Gentoo, I
operating
just decide
system.
not to use it.
I
Guilty as
used to run
charged.
LFS before, but
Yeah, the
yeah.
point is they choose to go one step ahead even though they don't have to.
No, but so the thing, so if you remember the news bites on technology in the last decade, right? So you'll
Yeah,
always hear about Russian hackers. Like hackers
yes,
always come from Russia, and
correct.
that, like, I mean, that's the general trend. And so you would expect that Russia would be like leading the way to technological
Yeah.
supremacy, but it
Yeah,
seems that it is China that's going there.
but also China had other thing as well. Uh, Another contrarian view, private sector alone cannot do everything because private sector had an issue that they have to do short-term profit to be alive. China is a state corporation collaboration with another. It may not be collaboration, it might be like it take both together. So the government with a long-term view and resource, the company to execute fast enough. And for China, for some reason, they just have no rules. They literally have no rules. The cameras and everything will drive everybody crazy.
No,
China,
the way how China works is there's very little law and regulation for things. So
yeah,
they're gonna end up, especially the digital space is actually the best place for them to innovate before the government regulates, and that's
correct.
when they get too big to be censored by
So
the
this
government.
is just like the industrial age in the US,
Yep,
but now
Yes,
like happening in the digital age. So because in
yep,
the industrial age you have like child laborers basically,
yep,
right? You have like very
yeah,
little government oversight on things, and so basically
yep.
people just
correct,
do everything. And then you have, of course, a lot
correct.
of progress at the expense of like all of these
Yeah.
some
Yeah,
atrocities that
but
happen.
there's also a difference from the early days. This goes a bit to the politics side already, or right, the policy making side. The government are throwing a lot of money to build up the manpower, sending students overseas, have industrial espionage, have their own research going in, etc. It's a big program by itself.
So
So
now swimming cannot enter China after this episode.
yeah, so it's a collaboration between government and corporation. Whereas down here, it's almost that uh, the whole politics just mess up, policy making mess up. The business want to survive on their own thing, short term thinking as a result. So we don't have those. So which is why Malaysia is very weird place, right? So where's our progress? Short answer: our progress we don't have one because our government decided to save money, company decided to survive. There's nothing to move forward but to buy things in. So there's no big program.
But something
There's
that you can see
barely
a lot of
any.
progress recently is that you can see like how much the government influence is that like the e-wallet thing in Malaysia.
Correct.
There's this boom because of
So
there's this like the government basically encourage it. They dump basically they just dump money to the market.
correct, but then it's not as big as the whole program
Yeah.
to change everything. You see, it's here one program, here the program, and all that. So which is why I was when I meant that we software people are capable to form a community to push ourselves forward. I mean it because software are easier to do that. So which is why I want to support the local software community because that's our best chance to develop ourselves. In China, you got all the support and all the industry willing to do industry. We don't have those down here. It's getting complicated.
No, it's actually yeah at the expense of a lot of other things.
Correct. So
I
yeah,
think we are around. Yeah, we should close off.
yes,
Hmm.
definitely.
Anything we want to add up before we wrap up?
Okay, so I'm
So
going to challenge you guys next round. I do not know whether it's next week or the week after. The challenge is this: predict the future for 1 year.
I don't know.
uh,
What I think something
uh,
better.
uh,
Let's just do the. I predict that we'll do a pie themed meetup because of the Pie Day happening next year
yeah.
in
Yeah,
February, which is the tenth
So yeah.
10th birthday, right?
Yeah.
The
And
yeah,
tenth
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's almost 10 years old.
anniversary of
yeah.
Raspberry Pi. So amazing that 10 years ago, speaking of 10 years, 10 years ago, there was no Raspberry Pi, and now it's
Mm.
like you have a credit card sized 35 US dollar. How much is that in ringgit? About
You have
150
Very
a
cheap.
ringgit.
you have a usable
Yeah,
computer for less than 200 ringgit.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, and it's like that's like a computer back then cost like quite a lot, and that's a
So
desktop computer, like so large.
you either get a 1,000 ringgit computer or you don't get any computer at all.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Uh,
next week, next February, so we'll see what we can
yeah.
do.
We just.
They want people to be celebrating
I think
and having
yeah.
Raspberry Pi
It can be
jams.
as simple as
So
just like just a gathering, like we just order some pizzas.
We eat pie. We
yeah,
should do we should do Pie Day
not pizza.
on March
uh,
14.
I actually try to find pie on Pie Day, but it's actually not so easy to get pie like
No, I have
those
to make
apple
do with
I'm
pie.
sure there are a lot on those atas restaurants, like
yeah.
those like Thai.
McDonald's doesn't count
So what happened
Why
is
not?
I had the best boss ever.
because you're
And the
supposed to
best,
be have a circumference.
yeah. So I have the
You're
best
not
boss
supposed to be a
ever.
cylinder.
On Pie Day, the guys managed to get pie in the
Mm,
office.
wow.
Uh,
No,
Yeah.
so the McDonald's one counts because pi is a geometric
yeah,
concept, right? And
cylinder
so
included.
the pi and a cylinder are actually geometrically. Sorry, what was this? Um, there's the surface is actually
Yeah.
the same
Okay,
because you
fine.
can
It's
morph.
it's it's
Okay.
my personal bias and obsession.
So meanwhile, I think we are done.
Yeah.
Because we just nerd snipe everyone. So my apologies.
Okay.
So that's it. Next week we figure out what will happen. But I think for now we just goodbye.
Yes,
Yeah.
Should we?
and
Or should
like,
we not?
Right.
subscribe.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
click here somewhere out there. Things.